and we're going to make a wine glass today. Go ahead and start Bryce. And then when we get into Bryce, the first thing we're going to do is select and delete our default ground plane. We won't be needing it, so it'll just be in the way. Then we're going to create a sphere and immediately open the object attributes by clicking on the little letter A gadget next to the object, set to positive, which is the first boolean of the set. Then we're going to stretch or resize the sphere about yay so in the y-axis only. Notice by clicking on the bottom of the little gadget there. Bring it down just about that so it gets the shape of the bowl for the glass. Now we're going to duplicate that with Control D and resize it about so much. You also notice I've also moved it up a little bit here, but yeah, go inward from the center of the gadget to get to it to equally resize in each direction. Now we're going to go ahead and keep it with that object still selected. We're going to go and select again the object attributes and switch it to negative. That's our second boolean. Then we're going to duplicate the first object, or either of the two spheres, really either of those two objects. This one I already slightly resized it just so you could see that it, that it was a new object. And the first thing we're going to do with that now is convert it to a cylinder. Now, if you click on the little gadget which I've highlighted here at the top of the screen, you'll have to hold the button down which will give you the whole list of all the different objects you can convert to, which is all the primitives. And you'll have to move over to the one that you want, in this case the cylinder, and let go. Unfortunately, the screen capture utility that I'm using to make this video is not allowing me to show you what happens when I have a mouse clicked. So I just have to show you where the button is, and you'll just have to try it yourself. Anyway, once we've done that, we can go ahead and call up its object attributes and hit intersect. We also want to resize it down, like I had already done here, so that about so much, so that it's completely covering from the bottom of the other two objects up to, what is that, like 3/4 of the way up. That's the third type of boolean, by the way, the intersect boolean. Now, if we select all three of them and then hit group, which is the little G button there, that's the final step to creating the boolean geometry, because it's only when you join these various boolean states together in one object that they actually interact with each other. And if we go ahead and do a test render, ta-da, there you go, an object made with all three booleans in one object. Next step is to select by using the control click on the first sphere, the outer one, and we want to control C for copy and control V for paste instead of duplicating, because that way it's not included in the group, which it would be if we hit control D. So by copying and pasting here, we create a new object that is outside of that group that we have created. And the first thing we're going to do with that is move it downwards. Notice that I'm using the gadgets up top exclusively instead of the little gadgets that are on the object itself to resize and everything else. And I'm also never dragging and dropping an object to move it, because this way it keeps it all in a perfect line. We can see we want everything to be aligned, both the X and the Z directions, and only want to make movement in the Y direction. So we can do that by isolating it by using just that top device there to move the object up and down instead of dragging it or any other means of moving it. Then we're going to convert that one to a torus. Now we can see here this torus, it's been slightly resized, and it's a little turned a little bit out of whack. I'm not sure exactly when I did that, but apparently I did. So we're gonna go ahead and hit unscale and unrotate if necessary, but unscale, which comes off the little triangle there at the bottom of the scale gadget at the top. And then we're going to go ahead and rotate the torus 90 degrees along the x-axis. Notice that up here I've mentioned that you hold down the shift as you drag it to rotate it. That way it restricts it to every 45 degrees. And we want to get 90 degrees, so of course it's two shifts of two rotates of 45 degrees, and that way it comes out nice and flat and even. Now we're going to edit the torus by clicking on the little E gadget there next to in the stack of buttons there next to the object, which allows us to change the inner diameter of the torus itself. In this case, 486 is what I've chosen as ideal. You can make it larger or smaller depending on how thick or thin you want the stem of the glass to be. I want this one to be fairly thin, so I've gotten 486 is where I decided to set it at, which through trial and error seemed to be right. Now we're going to turn that torus into a negative and stretch it a little bit here to make it taller, to get the angle just till it looks right. And then we're going to duplicate that with Control D, and we're going to convert it to a cylinder. Use the Convert Selection to gadget up top again create it to a cylinder. This time we definitely need to unrotate it because we rotated the thing 90 degrees previously. Now we're going to unrotate it so that it's again into its default vertical positioning for a cylinder. And we're going to set the attributes of that cylinder to positive. Now we're going to resize the cylinder so it's just big enough to capture the flare of the upper stem, and so it looks right. You can see it goes just a little over the halfway point down that inner flare of the I guess I'm not sure exactly what to call it, but the inner part, the donut hole, as it were, of the cylinder, of the torus. And then take that object, duplicate it, and resize it until it looks like so, because we're going to make the down part of the stem. And we want to line it up so that it's the exact same size as the narrowest point on the inner flare of the inside of the donut hole there. And you zoom way in when you want to, see how close we're getting, because we are just eyeing it. Then we want to resize it on its y-axis using the gadget up top till it becomes long enough to use like this. And we're going to switch it to neutral. It's no longer a boolean. It's a non-boolean object. Now, if we select all three of the objects and group them, we've created our second boolean object. And we do a quick test render, and you can see here, this is the result we wanted. So everything's looking good. We can go further. Now we want to select just the two parts of that group shown here, the torus and the cylinder, by holding Control click to get the little pop-up menu first and select the cylinder or the torus, and then Shift Control click to call up the pop-up menu again and select the cylinder as well as the torus that's already there that we've already selected. And now we're going to copy and paste those so that we can create two of those Boolean objects that we'll need for the base. Again, in a different, outside of the group, is why we use copy and paste instead of duplicate. Now, those two objects we're going to shift downwards to get down to where, in the neighborhood of where the base is going to be. And we're going to resize them like so. We're squashing the torus, that about so. And then the cylinder, again, like it is, you can see here, to capture just from the bottom half of the inner part of the torus. And in this case, because we're going down to the base, we can pretty much go down to the, line it up so it's at the bottom. It doesn't have to be completely to the bottom, depending on the angle you want to do it at, but mostly. And then we're going to duplicate that cylinder and turn that into a sphere. You could also copy and paste it. It wouldn't matter because we don't have a group existing right now. Things aren't grouped yet, so it doesn't matter if we control duplicate or control copy and control paste. But we're going to make that sphere and then resize it so it's squashed down, gets bigger around like that to make the base. And we're going to turn that into a positive attribute for boolean geometry, and then duplicate the sphere and convert it to a cylinder, which will then turn into a negative boolean. You notice I made it a little bit bigger here. It doesn't have to be the exact same size, but we want to make it there, and so that it's set just a little above the halfway height of the sphere, which forms the full base of the glass. You can see it all coming together here. Once we group those together, creating our third Boolean object here, then we can move it up to where it, you can see there's a little bit of overlap with that neutral cylinder in the middle for the stem. And then do a quick test render, and you can see, there we go. There's our wine glass. Now let's go ahead and do the materials here so you can see what it looks like in the end. And we select both the two Boolean objects on the bottom there, and we're going to go into the materials lab by clicking M and going to the gemstones section, and the purples tab is what you can use whatever you want, of course. And then the object, or what was, whichever one I had selected there, I think it's a dark iolite, I believe. And now we're going to select the top of the glass here, the top of the first Boolean object, and go into its materials lab and select glass now and clear crystal. However, we do want to bring the refraction down a bit. The default crystal refraction is a bit extreme. It doesn't look as natural. I came up with 152. You might want to adjust yours to slightly more, slightly less than that, to get until it looks right to your eye. And then we can bring up all the objects together and group them. And there we have our final glass as far as the shape goes, and do a test render, and there we go. There's our glass. And then just a matter of how you want to use it and where you want to place it. All right, if there's any questions, please let me know, and I'll be glad to answer them. Okay, hope it works out.